Outbuddies on paper sounds like it would be another one of my dream games. A challenging Metroidvania with a focus of being under the sea in a very non-linear environment with some really interesting movement tech and challenges. But as with a lot of examples of the genre, it is very hard, I feel, to get it fine-tuned properly, and when it doesn't work out like that, it ends up with a game that feels less than the sum of its parts. With Outbuddies here, the story is that we are exploring an undersea world in order to figure out what is happening with society. And we are now caught in a realm of gods, sea creatures, and obviously lots and lots of water. Our mission unfolds over the course of playing the game, as well as, of course, a multitude of upgrades and new powers that you'll get that changes how you go through it, from missiles to a bubble gun, as well as fighting multiple bosses. Now, from the footage that you've seen so far, this looks pretty much like your standard Metroidvania, and the game features again a lot of staples from such hits like Super Metroid. One of the big twists that Outbuddies has is our little drone that follows us around. The drone can be switched to at any time and is used for puzzle solving, finding secret objects, and what you just saw there with kind of hacking characters to change their property and do something special with them. And besides that, you have movement tech in the form of wall jumping, shooting and bouncing yourself off of things, the bubble gun that we mentioned a second ago, and the game itself, while it may not look it from the footage that you're seeing, there is a lot in terms of movement tech and kind of getting around the environment. It's very platformer heavy compared to other examples of Metroidvania. Maybe the closest comparison would be something like Hollow Knight. But as you play through, you're going to be finding more powers and upgrading your character. The environment itself is very non-linear in its approach. Typically when we look at Metroidvania titles, there's usually a form or a passive form of guiding the player around. If an area you can't reach, then when you start or we get to the beginning of it, you'll run into a quote-unquote door, and you'll need to come back with the prerequisite power or option to get past it. With Outbuddies here, you're going to find that the game lets you wander quite a bit into areas before realizing whether or not you have the ability to get through it. And again, with the focus on movement tech, especially with wall jumping, propelling yourself around, it can be sometimes hard to tell whether or not you have the power to get through it. The only exception being if you run into something that has a drone-specific ability. And like we said, there is a lot here to this game. When we play this on stream, I think we got maybe a grand total of maybe 20 to 25% through the title, and that was after several hours of playing it. And the game definitely goes for that pretty much, here's this world, go wander around it, as we saw with something like Hollow Knight. But while this is all well and good, and again on paper, sounds like another winner of the Metroidvania genre, Outbuddies' balance and pacing feel off. And when we talk about such a high concept or high technical based design like a Metroidvania, those little issues can come back to bite you in a big way. And we're going to talk about that next, but first, a quick shout out to our current Game Wisdom sponsors and supporters. And now for a quick thank you to our current Game Wisdom sponsors and Patreon supporters. And if you'd like to continue the discussion on game design, be sure to check out our Discord channel, linked down below. With Outbuddies, there's not one singular element here that made me fall out of love with it, but a lot of little things and details that came back to just make this game more frustrating than interesting to play. The first one is that the game has this tendency to zoom in and out based on different rooms. As you can see, our character model is smaller here. In some of the previous footage you saw we were larger. It gets very annoying in terms of perspective change, and I also had kind of issues of keeping track of enemies and what's going on screen. Everything has very bright and distinct colors, and it all starts to become a little bit hard on your eyes. The next problem is that I just do not like the drone interface. The game does come with local co-op, allowing one player to play as a drone and one as our main character, but controlling the drone itself was just very annoying, and it also kills any sense of pacing to playing the game, because you cannot control both at the same time. So what ends up happening is that you have to stop what you're doing, mess around with the right analog stick, and then go back to the main character. Now, if you're hit as the main character while controlling the drone, it knocks you out of it. And there's a lot of puzzles and sections that just become more frustrating when you're trying to make use of the drone. For instance, you have to use the drone for several physics-related puzzles, and the weirdest thing is that it's controlled via the opposite. So if you want the piece to move to the right, you have to move the drone onto the left, and vice versa. And that is also how you use the drone's hacking ability, that it shoots it in the opposite direction, kind of like a slingshot. But not only does it feel very unintuitive, but it slows down the proceedings of making use of these functionalities. Like I said in the last part, the game is non-linear, but it becomes a fault. And this was something very similar that Hollow Knight ran into. That the game was all too happy to just basically let you wander around without any idea as to where you're supposed to go or what you're supposed to be doing. And Outbuddies is even worse in that regard. There are very few teleport/fast travel options, and you're going to have to do a ton of backtracking unless you know exactly where you're supposed to be going in the world. And the game map in this is huge. Probably, I would say this is nearer to Hollow Knight in terms of just the sheer scale where you're supposed to be going, but again, without any kind of fast travel with less options. And we ran into many cases where I had to just completely stop what I was doing, backtrack, and go a whole, mess of going back and forth to get around. Then there were some technical issues with the game that it's kind of hard to see by the footage, but I ran into many cases where the game would cancel out my action, whether it was charging my shot, doing a jump, or just trying to get around enemies. And this is one of those games where fast-moving enemies who get in close become very hard to hit, just due to how your character aims and moves. And like I said, it's never just one thing in games like this, and all these issues began to just rub me the wrong way, and I just got tired of dealing with them. And when you start running into cases of using advanced options, such as the bubble gun for platforming, the boss fights, and again, enemies who you can't kill easily, it just gets harder and harder. Another thing that I didn't mention that does become annoying is you start running areas where the camera does not pan properly, and you'll have to make a lot of blind jumps, or be hit by enemies off screen without any way of knowing that that projectile was coming. Now, while the game does quick save whenever you enter a new room, you can die very fast in it. And again, this is one of those games that if it wasn't for these issues, I could see myself going through the entirety of it, much like Hollow Knight. But Hollow Knight worked because despite how big the environment was, I always felt like I was in control of our main character, and that there was always something pushing me along to explore or find. And again, just the basic quality life features of having fast travel and an easy way of getting around, knowing kind of where to go, helps out a lot in that regard. Now, with that said though, there is still of course a chance that Outbuddies will be patched and updated. That can always happen with games like this, but again, I can't review a game on what could come. And probably Outbuddies is closer to something like Axiom Verge, in that sense of, we're just going to let you wander around, and good luck if you find where you're supposed to go, or if you miss an essential clue, well, you're going to get stuck for a while. One of the strangest things, and this will be my last example before we wrap things up, was we were stuck in a room where all the doors were locked, and somebody gives a clue about clawfish or crawfish causing issues, but the enemies that you're supposed to kill look more like piranhas, and the game has no bestiary to let you know what the enemy types were. So it was just a case of, what was I supposed to do, and the game not telling me anything of use. And that seems to be a common thread of some of the issues with Outbuddies, that it leaves you so much of trying to figure out where you're supposed to go or how things work, that it basically has some major issues in terms of playability and onboarding. If you can get past them, you're going to have a very challenging Metroidvania game, and one that's going to last some time, especially if you want to get 100%. But if you are looking for one that is a little bit better in terms of playability, and just in terms of the overall feel of play, then this game may prove to be a little too frustrating for you. But with that said, I would like to thank the developers for giving me a press kit to check this one out. If there is enough interest in me going through it to the end, we may try that. So let me know in the comments below, and let me know what you think, for those of you who did play Outbuddies as well, and whether or not you had some of the same struggles I did in terms of controller and UI design. With that said, thanks for watching this video. If you are working on a game that you'd like me to take a look at for the channel, please don't hesitate to get in touch, and come on back for daily discussions on game design here, and on game wisdom, where some of the art and science of games. Once again, this has been Outbuddies, and I will see you all next time. If you're looking for more wisdom about game design, be sure to check out my latest offering of books, 20 Essential Games to Study, aimed for first-time developers and students looking for some inspiration for their upcoming games, and Game Design Deep Dive Platformers if you're interested in anything regarding 2D and 3D platforming design. They're both available in print, digital, and wherever books are being sold. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoy things, be sure to do all the liking and subscribing that the kids are doing these days. Check out our Discord channel link down below, where we hang out and chat game design, and come back later tonight for our regular streamings. But that's it, and tune in for more great content here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games.